early Thanksgiving. This is the Thanksgiving edition of China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. We have one rule: although we appreciate vigorous debate, let's all be considerate and respectful to each other. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. Even if it sounds like investment advice, it isn't. We encourage those who enjoy this room to please connect with us on LinkedIn, get the word out to your friends, and of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li, and I am the Managing Director at Sino Auto Insights, a Beijing-based consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good evening from my side. My name is Lei, and I am the former chief editor of China Auto Review, which published newsletters and the only tabloid magazine in English focused exclusively on the Chinese auto market. I've spent pretty much the last 20 plus years on the ground in China covering the industry that's pre-pandemic. I've been in the US since the pandemic as an independent analyst consultant, still trying to keep tabs on the rapidly evolving market. This is episode number 32, and I'm back home to a familiar setting.
42.
This is Thanksgiving week. I guess we moved up the episode 2 days earlier to accommodate turkey and football here in the U.S. Sort of.
Lions, man, Lions.
Yeah, well, hope they do well. This week we're talking Guangzhou Auto Show and XPeng Q3 2021 earnings and more. Let's go to Guangzhou. So just to recap on some of the numbers that we mentioned, I think 2 episodes ago about the Guangzhou Auto Show. So 91 press conferences on November 19th, 54 global debuts, 28 concept vehicles, 241 NEVs, 1,020 total vehicles, and 220,000 square meters of exhibition space.
I'm out of breath.
So that's the official numbers from the organizers. But certainly there are only a handful of debuts, I think, that made people talking. What were some of the models that caught your attention?
I think the G9 stands out. I think the XPeng design language has kind of evolved, and was really impressed with. We can only see the exterior. The G9, very clean, no horns on the hood or on the roof of the vehicle. So we'll see how that plays out in the production version that we'll likely see in April. I thought the Avatar brand launch was pretty interesting. And of course, the Salon brand launch was also very interesting. And, I can't seem to think of anything else besides maybe the Lyriq, I think, was also pretty notable for launching on November 17th. And I think those were also what everybody else was talking about. And what were you seeing on the China internet from the standpoint of any other models or brands that were standing out?
Well, I caught up over the weekend on the Guangzhou Auto Show since I was in LA last week.
Lots to consume.
Yeah, I'm still kind of relishing the experience because it's been so long that I've attended auto show. As a matter of fact, the last auto show I attended was the 2019 Guangzhou Auto Show. And back then, Byton was still something, right? And Tesla... One of
the headliners, right?
And Tesla just put up their domestic-made Model 3 for the first time on that show. Before, just a month or so before delivery started. And the rest is history, right? So... I send you a list of my I don't know whether you saw it.
I'm staring right at it right now.
Yeah, so I broke it down to the different brand origins. So, American brands, German,
Yep.
UK, Japanese, Korean. And if you look at the list, basically handful of brands from the non-Chinese brands. And for the Chinese brands, you had to scroll down quite a bit, right? so basically, the Chinese, especially with the startups, are definitely leading the way as far as smart EVs are concerned. And when it comes to auto shows, the limelight are pretty much on the Chinese brands as well. And it wasn't different this year in Guangzhou.
Let me add this. Let me add this note, Lei. I think you should send this list over to Joe Biden so he knows how much work the U.S. automotive market needs to do to play catch up to the Chinese EV market.
Yeah, or Kamala Harris, who got trolled, right? with her tweet. But yeah, I guess one of the most talked about and one of the most outrageous models, design-wise or anything else-wise, was the Salon, the Mecha Dragon?
Mecha Dragon, yeah.
Mecha Dragon, which on first look, it was a mashup between a Lamborghini and a Porsche.
I think it looks like a Nissan 370 a little
Plus
bit.
that. And one of the features that got everyone when talking, if you saw the posters that they had beforehand, was we got 4 lidars. So if you don't have that many lidars, shut up. And then guess what happened? The Neta S came out with 6 lidars. So
it wasn't enough to just add an additional one. We got to go 2 more.
So this Guangzhou Auto Show definitely had that, the Chinese saying this year, the Chinese phrase 内卷, which in English it means involution, but that doesn't basically means that you're forced to respond and do things because other competitors are so you, it's sort of like you have to do certain things because other people are doing them better than you.
Right.
I think that was on display at the Guangzhou Auto Show. So I think the Mecha Dragon was one of the most talked about, just purely because it came out much different than what people expected. Right? Well, it's all about SUVs, and then they come out with, this.
And Great Wall is known to be.
Yeah.
I won't say copy, but
look at
that might
Aura,
be the most
right?
appropriate word.
Look at their other brands at this year's Guangzhou Auto Show. The Aura, right, came out with the Lightning Cat, with the Punk Cat, right? And they're still waiting to be launched. Tank came out with the 500, which had the macho SUV had 20,000 orders in less than 24 hours or something.
Can I ask you a question about Great Wall? They're just screaming out of the gates, right? Because this week they also officially opened their Munich office. Mm-hmm. They, a couple of weeks ago, they launched was it the Pretty Cat or Good Cat in the UK? And so they're looking at acquiring a factory outside of Barcelona. So what's up with this aggressiveness coming out of Great Wall? Even more aggressive than any other automaker.
I think back in 2019, if I remember correctly, it was at the former Frankfurt Motor Show. So that was in September 2019. Great Wall, they announced plans to enter Europe in 2021. Specifically Germany, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And 2023, the North America, basically US market. So they got big ambitions. And all of their sub-brands or the brands under the Great Wall umbrella, they're, kicking and screaming with all these new models. And Salon being the latest brand to emerge. Because right, Great Wall's got the Haval. Haval is the leading SUV brand.
Yep.
The Aura, right? The Aura dedicated EV brand for females. Okay, that's their positioning. The Tank brand. The Way, luxury SUV brand and also the Great Wall pickup. So they've got all these things going on, and they're big on the overseas market.
And I had to add real quickly that I know a couple of Great Wall employees in Michigan. So they've had an operation in Metro Detroit for quite some time as well. So they've planted seeds a long time ago, and it looks like they're starting to try to grow and nurture those seeds into full-blown global operations. So
yeah, and the other ones you mentioned, the XPeng G9, obviously they've had this going on since when they revealed the brand refresh a few days before Guangzhou.
Yep.
And I think it was a bit surprising in the sense that they had just revealed the P5, you remember, back in Shanghai, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't expect them to reveal the G9 so fast. Considering
I was pretty surprised too.
Right, considering the P5 only started deliveries officially late last month. So it's been only a month on the market. But yeah, G9 I think was overall one of the best all around in terms of design, the size. It's an ES6 competitor, so it's addressing a much bigger market. Not the ES8.
That's the meat of the market.
Yeah, and the design wise, it looks pretty smooth. I don't have any, unlike the Mecha Dragon or it looked pretty clean, and the size is about right. And it's the first model dedicated to China and the international market. I think that's one of the messages. And obviously with newer hardware and software, especially on the autonomous driving features, and it's their next flagship model. So, but I guess we will have to wait, one more year. So starts deliveries in Q3, 2022. So, and if you remember, the P7 was unveiled at the Guangzhou Auto Show in 2020, in 2019, and started deliveries middle last year.
And let me take a moment to say that this means that for months ago, XPeng was running dual paths, developing the P5 and the G9 at the same time. So they have a pretty small team still. And for them to be able to roll these two vehicles out almost back to back, right? Run one on top of the other tells you how hard they've been working in, behind the scenes, the engineering teams, especially because the P5 is a sedan and the G9 is an SUV. So not likely a ton of engineering overlap, at least from a external design standpoint. Software, there's probably a lot of leveraging platforms and creating economies of scale. But for them to be developing two vehicles at the same time for a small company, that's pretty impressive. Now, can they execute on the production side? Because 1 year seems pretty aggressive, especially when we know that the interior hasn't been frozen yet because they didn't show it. So that means that if they're going to show it in April at the Beijing Auto Show where the doors open and we can go check and sit down inside of it, then Design Freak needs to happen right after Chinese New Year likely. So they're going to be working pretty hard over the next few months.
Yeah. And speaking of the Chinese New Year, we just heard, we'll talk more on the XPeng earnings, that we've heard that the P5, if you order now, you'll get it after. The wait is until after the Chinese New Year, so roughly 3 to 4 months. But back to the show, some of the other notable models I thought were, the Arcfox Alpha SHI Huawei Inside Edition is still in its final phases of preparing to be delivered, and it looks like it's going to start on Christmas with the small-scale delivery start. So remember, that's one of the models with LiDARs, the Huawei LiDARs. And the other one is the Feifan Auto, used to be known as R Auto. The Feifan Auto R7, used to be called the ES33, is equipped with Luminar's LiDAR on the top of the vehicle. and that's starting deliveries in the second half of 2022. Okay, just a couple of models powered by LiDAR. And then the BYD Destroyer 05, interesting name. It's interesting that this is part of their Ocean kind of series, which covers two different types of products.
Right.
So the Dolphin being part of it. So it's it's based on the 3.0 BYD's E3.0 platform.
Mm-hmm.
And the Destroyer basically is their DMI platform model, but both fall under the kind of the Ocean series. And then I guess other ones, MPV. So there were actually two electric MPVs. One was the Voyah luxury MPV called the Dream.
EMPV?
EMPV, yeah, EMPV. I think they had a Chinese name. I forgot.
I forget the name.
Yeah, but they're saying that it's the first luxury large size MPV. But SAIC Maxus also came out with the MIFA MIFA 9, which, by the way, stands for Maximum Intelligent Friendly Artistic. MIFA 9, the world's first full-size luxury smart electric MPV.
That's a mouthful. That's
starting deliveries in May 2022.
So for those that aren't familiar with the China market, the MPVs, they're basically large vans. They sell really well and they're super expensive. With the exception of the Maxus, I think the Voyah will be fairly expensive. But at least in the tier 1 cities, they sell quite a bit. Mercedes has their own, Toyota has one. They're bigger than the GL8, than the Buick GL8, and they're popular with families. So
yeah, speaking of the GL8, we can head over to the American brands because Buick was quite active with the GL8 flagship concept and this mobility concept. So remember GL8 since its introduction into the market in 2000. Okay, 2000. So it's been on the market 21 years.
It created the market. Basically.
Yeah, pretty much for that segment of the market, there hasn't been really a challenger in all these 21 years. Okay, it's the GL8 has been the perennial leader.
Yes,
in the sort of the business MPV segment. And so this time they came out with a new flagship concept, kind of previews the designs of the next generation of the GL8.
They didn't finish designing the front end, in my humble opinion.
I didn't like it that much, to be honest. It looked weird, but it's a concept, right?
Yep.
And then the smart pod concept. I think one of these was done over in the US and the other one was done at Patek, the local design joint venture. And you talked about the Lyriq. Lyriq had some good numbers. Pre-order started on November 17th.
Yeah. I think that's going to do fine. I think I've spoken to some GM folks and they're pretty conservative with their estimates because I'm not sure they know what to expect, especially when the vehicle starts being delivered. But, the features should be pretty competitive when it launches in 6 or 7 months here. It's going to be built in Shanghai. And so, I anticipate that Cadillac will do okay with that.
Yeah, and this is about GM, their new Ultium platform, and putting this. I think when they announced sort of their new strategy and this new Ultium platform and next generation EVs, the Lyriq was probably one of the first to come out of this platform, right? So they're choosing this model to localize and also to build on. Cadillac is all the brands that GM has in China, besides Wuling, obviously, is one of the growing brands.
Mm-hmm.
though it might
From
come at an expense of discounting, but
from a small base, so
yeah,
it was close to zero years ago, and
but they're selling over 200,000 units a year.
yeah,
So
year over year they've grown quite a bit percentage wise, but from a very small base originally. So
and I think they are already selling more than Chevrolet. So if you look at it, the Chevrolet and Buick brands have been in the funk in recent years.
yeah,
Part of it is due to their offering of the 3-cylinder models that didn't work out. So they're going back with 4-cylinder ICE models. But I think it looks like the Lyriq should do okay based on numbers so far, the order numbers so far.
I think it's worth noting as well that GM's strategy originally was to launch the Cadillac Lyriq in China first, and then launch it in the United States. But due to COVID, I think
It looks
they've now
like about the same time.
right. They've launched it almost simultaneously. And so I think there was a little bit of a delay on this side, but yeah, the Lincoln and Cadillac, their challenge years ago was that everything that they built and sold was imported. Now Cadillac through SGM and Lincoln have started being built locally, which should help them.
Yeah, most of the
sales.
sales are locally built.
Right. And so, those imports were increasing the price, number one, and then number two, making it much more difficult to compete with the locally built Audis, Mercedes, and BMWs. So,
yeah, and speaking of Lincoln, Ford and Lincoln obviously with their EVOS and the Z with the Zephyr. Remember, they were one of the two of the most talked about models at the Shanghai Auto Show, and now they're finally being launched. I think one is officially launched the market, the other one's starting pre-sales. I think it's worth mentioning for the Ford EVOS. It's one of the first. They're touting it as the smartest ICE model.
Yeah,
okay,
which is weird.
Yeah, but a day after the Guangzhou Auto Show, Ford officially announced that they've expanded their CV2X feature into Guangzhou. And the other cities, I think, were Wuxi and Changsha. So this year, the EVOS will be one of 4 Ford locally produced models available with that feature, first only in V2I or vehicle to infrastructure. So, for example, in Guangzhou, I think they have roughly right now 100 traffic intersections that will be able to communicate with the car so that it can notify the driver, whether ahead of you, the traffic lights is being changed or things like that. And I think Ford and GM were very active on the CV2X front.
Yes.
Like many years ago, they had this demonstration.
Working with the cities and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think this is part of, Ford and GM that it's kind of, in a way, it's leading than some of the other models. I guess that's why they're calling it the smartest ICE.
And I think the 2022 will start to see the emergence of more V2X features and a couple of simple examples. Obviously, V2X helps with safety. If you're able to communicate with the vehicles on the road, it can help you avoid collisions. But another way to look at it is if you're communicating with the traffic light, the car knows, especially if there's no cars in front of you, that you need to be at X speed in order to make this red light or before turning red. And so those are the kind of things that should help with fuel efficiency, should help with battery. So there's a lot of implications for being able to communicate not only with other cars, not only with traffic lights, but eventually with people walking with their mobile phones, people on bikes. So V2X has a lot of wide-ranging implications that should help cities.
Right. So the plan is to have these vehicles available for V2V, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, and vehicle to pedestrian. But right now, I think it's only available for vehicle to infrastructure.
Yep.
And from their official release, the Ford EVOS, the Mustang Mach-E, the Explorer, and the Edge Plus. So all four of these models have these features as standard. Okay, and so in Guangzhou, there's about 100 intersections. In Wuxi, 482 intersections. In Changsha, 177 intersections that cover the V2I feature. So I guess it's part of the ADAS system, if you will, to help assisting drivers.
I think many of the cars already have the hardware built in, and it's more or less of getting cities online in order to turn the feature on, depending on what city you reside in. So I don't think it's going to be something that there's additional hardware that's needed. I think most of these cars have those control units that allow it to communicate with other hardware as long as those features are turned on. So
and competing with the Ford Evos as the smartest ICE was back to the Chinese brand. That was this Beijing brand Rubik's Cube.
Oh,
Mofang.
Yeah,
is that the right translation? Mofang?
No, I'm not sure, but I saw that. I didn't get a chance to kind of look it up.
It's touted as the world's first ICE SUV equipped with Huawei's smart cockpit. Smart, So Beijing, I'm telling you, they're going all Huawei.
Yeah, and I think that's. I don't know what the EU's reaction to Huawei hardware is going to be, but I don't know if that's going to play very well if they're going to try to export. If brands that are tied tightly to Huawei infrastructure and hardware, I don't know how that's going to play in the US, to be frank.
Okay, so let's move to the Germans. Germans, actually, really, I think the most talked about were probably just only two models. The BMW iX, which is selling for about 850,000 RMB.
A lot of money.
Yeah,
it's selling for a lot of money.
And the SAIC Audi's first EV model, the Q5 e-tron, which is starting pre-sales with the price range of 400,000 to 520,000.
Which I believe is effectively a rebadged ID6.
ID6, yeah. It's based on the same MEB platform.
Built on the same, built at the same plant on the same line, right?
Right.
So.
And I think FAW Audi was supposed to come out with a Q4 e-tron, but it wasn't at this year's Guangzhou Auto Show. But that's kind of like a sister model. And then remember I think two of the most low-key model launches were the EQA and the EQB. So only one trim was available for each.
Right.
One is 365,000, the other one is 437,000. So remember, so if you look at the EQB and the Lyriq, I'd rather pick the Lyriq, right?
Yeah, right.
They're the same price.
Yeah. And
that was very low key, yeah.
And that the Cadillac Lyriq will have an up-to-date set of features that can compete in today's China EV market, whereas some of Volkswagen's EV products aren't able to compete from a feature set standpoint. So, is Mercedes making those same type of mistakes? I don't know. But let's be sure to note that BMW is making the mistakes of overpricing their EVs. 800,000 for the iX is just a ridiculous number. That's over $100,000 easily, right? 120, right? So something like that.
Well, there will be people that will buy it, but
oh yeah, for sure.
It's such a niche market.
Yeah. So
and then Volkswagen really didn't have anything. because all their
No.
ID models were already launched. So they didn't have anything to show except a new version of the Villaran MPV, which is not doing well, and actually another ICE model, the new Sagitar.
Yeah, it's these ICE models. This is where it's a little bit.
I think Volkswagen ran out of models to show, or at least on the E model side of it, because all their
Right.
five models are already launched.
Yeah, and yeah,
The Japanese, boy, I think the Japanese, at least for Toyota, it was all SUVs, 4 SUV models. And this is an area I think where interesting is for Toyota. It's this is used to be the sweet spot for Volkswagen, but now Toyota is coming out with the 4 models: Corolla Cross, Harrier, Venza, Frontlander. So 2 in the GAC Toyota JV
yeah.
and 2 in the FAW Toyota JV. So it was
They see opportunity.
it was a huge offensive. And then one of the other models from the Honda's EN models, the ENP1 from GAC Honda.
Mm-hmm.
Nissan came out with the e-Power, locally produced e-Power, the first e-Power model for China, I think based on the Sylphy. So basically with the engine that powers the motors, and the motor 100%, the wheels are powered by the motors. So it's almost like an extended range, but a different type of extended range.
And none of those Toyotas are EVs, by the way.
No. And most hybrids, they might come out with hybrids.
Yeah.
The only EV that Toyota is talking about is the BZ4X coming out next year.
Yeah, that's the only thing they have in their product portfolio. I'm sure they're trying to pull in some new products.
Other than that, the GAC Mitsubishi had an AirTech. That's an EV model.
Mm-hmm. If we take a step back, Lei, looking at your list, I think the legacies, again, we've said this numerous times, I think they thought they had more time for that switch over to EVs. And you can see that some of these guys are caught flat-footed because they're still introducing ICEs at the Guangzhou Auto Show, when you see each and every Chinese brand has introduced at the GZ Auto Show an EV. So these guys are going to be competing against EVs for customers. And there's enough product in the market where the variety will create this competition. And I think we're going to see a continuation of the China market abandoning the ICE market even faster.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great play for the Chinese domestic brands who are competing against the FAW Toyotas and the GAC Toyotas, right?
Right. Well, having said that, we talk about the EV penetration being 16%, almost close to 20% in the passenger vehicle segment. We talk about that, but then we still have the 80% of the market.
Yeah,
that's ICEs, and some of these players, especially for example, like Toyota. I think there's still a lot of addressable market that they're not in.
Right.
So I read in some of the Chinese press that this year's Guangzhou Auto Show, besides models like the G9 and the Salon and the EV models, one of the narratives was actually sort of a little bit of revenge of ICEs.
Mm.
If we look at Toyota being an example, if we look at the Ford, Lincoln, and some of the other models being launched, and even Lotus showed the Amira, which is their last ICE model, and it's selling for 858,000 RMB, and delivery starts in Q4 2022.
And a reminder to everyone that Lotus is coming out with an SUV, which for Lotus purists is not going to be going over well, but I think it'll help them create volume sales. So
so even for some of the Chinese brands, again going back to Great Wall, the Tank, the Way came out with some additional sort of the hybrid or plug-in models.
Sure.
So it wasn't. If we compare it to the LA Auto Show, LA Auto Show had less than like 10 debuts, but almost all 10 of the debuts were EVs.
Yeah. Except, glaringly absent was GM with no EVs at the LA Auto Show. So,
yeah.
So they're trying to straddle. These legacy guys are trying to straddle. And, to add to your revenge of the ICE statement, the reality is we know that Volkswagen has a footprint in China of around 4 million units. And most of that is domestically manufactured. So in a shrinking market, and with Toyota having new product, perhaps better product, at least in the ICE space, and Volkswagen struggling to gain share and build sales on the EV side, this
Double
squeezes
whammy.
Volkswagen on both ends. Exactly. And so you're going to start seeing, especially if Toyota eats into that volume stuff, right? On the ICE side, Volkswagen's going to really, really, really be pressed to make some aggressive moves in order to stem the loss of market share on the ICE side, and then the lack of gaining market share on the EV side. And I think what we're going to see is on the EV side, the Chinese domestic players gaining a lot of share in 2022, 2023. Because the foreign automakers have always been a little bit better at selling at the higher price points, right? And so
so by the end of next year, if you look at the brands, the Toyota brand versus the Volkswagen brand, not the group sales. If you look at the brand sales, I think Toyota will have caught up significantly.
I think so too
with Volkswagen, and
I think Honda's gonna do a little bit better as well, right?
Yeah. So and the fact is that they've won the part of the ICE market, right?
Yeah,
that's the interesting dynamic,
and the other thing that we have to remember is that most of these legacies in their financial statements and forecasts are using the revenue from the ICE sales for the next several years to fund their transition over to the EV side. And so if Volkswagen is 5%, 10% less in revenue, that matters quite a bit. And it makes them reconcile their strategic plan for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years because they don't have that cash from sales of ICEs. And every little bit counts, especially when you have such a large footprint, right? And if we average 300,000 units per factory, then a loss of 300,000 units over the course of a year, 500,000 units over the course of a year, we're talking 2 plants, 2 factories now, right? So this is thousands of jobs we're talking about. And so, and it creates relationship challenges between their joint venture partners too, right? So heavy is the head that wears the crown. So, hey, we are at 10:45. Let's move on to XPeng earnings a little bit. And then let me hear your thoughts on the XPeng earnings. And then maybe we can open the room up at the same time.
Well, everybody was looking for Q4 guidance, and it came out, sort of expected.
Pretty rosy.
Pretty rosy. So they did. So basically 35,000, around that number for the Q4 delivery guidance. They did just over 10,000 in October. So 25,000 left, which averages out to be at least 10,000 a month. Yep. And the only mystery or, that remains will be whether they get to 15,000 in November or in December.
I don't think they'll get there in November, but I think they could get there in December.
Yeah, but I feel like, a guidance is a guidance. If things turn out much better, hey, I don't see they might surprise people with 2 strong remaining months.
Yeah,
that could be a possibility.
It's more of a manufacturing challenge than a demand challenge, I think.
Well, it will really be interesting to see how P5 does in the first few months.
Sure.
So November will be the first full official month of deliveries, right? Mm-hmm. I think they already had some numbers for September, right?
Like 600 or 500 something, 500 something units.
400 or 500 something. So And then the numbers was rather small for October since only, 1 week of deliveries.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting P5 to get to 5,000 units a month pretty soon.
I think it'll be more than 50% of their sales, like or close to it.
For October, I think they mentioned in an earnings call that P7 accounted for 77% of sales. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, it's going to go down with the P5, but
Yeah.
that's a huge percentage.
Yeah. The P5 and the P7 are going to drive. The G3 is I think needs a refresh, but the P5 and P7 are going to drive a lot of their sales for the next several quarters,
And
I
then
think.
the other big topic they talked about in earnings was robotaxi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right.
Yep.
A little bit more than what they disclosed at the tech day. And one distinction is that they will use existing production models, for example, possibly the P5,
Yep.
to do the robotaxi. But the interesting thing is, who they will be working with. You need to have someone doing the operating
Yes.
part of it. So
The platform.
I guess He Xiaopeng, he did mention that they probably will work with the so-called mobility operation partners.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see who those are. But I guess the at the end of the day, I think for XPeng, the robo taxis are more to test out their future, Xpilot 4.0, 5.0 capabilities.
Well, I think it's
And
two things. I think it's to test it out, but also to get more cars on the road, to get more data, to feed that.
Yeah, so having
system.
these vehicles under testing operating conditions for extended periods of time in multi scenarios to kind of build on their hardware and software capabilities.
Right.
Also, I think He Xiaopeng mentioned they will probably do 8,000 to 10,000 kilometers a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to help with corner-based cases, lower costs. And in contrast, if you remember, NIO is doing something similar, but in a supporting role with Mobileye, right? Mobileye is working with NIO to launch robotaxi service in Germany, in Munich next year, and also in Israel, perhaps. So that's another kind of model, but it looks like the Xiaopeng's robotaxi model is more controlled by itself.
Yeah.
Rather than just providing the vehicles, right?
The NIO vehicles are priced too expensively, I think, to be used as robotaxis or fleet vehicles unless they were decontented substantially and margins were reduced. But then it could really hit into their branding, right? It could diminish their brand if you saw a bunch of ES6s that were fleets. So they have to tread carefully, tread lightly for sure with that stuff.
Yeah, and the only other thing is the one thing I tweeted earlier today is how international are they going to get? Meaning after China, Norway, other European countries, can we see stateside possibly around mid-decade? Because starting from 2023, right? He Xiaopeng said all of their vehicles, newly launched vehicles, will be supported. Will support all Chinese, Europe, and other international markets safety standards. What could that mean? I'm thinking, by mid-decade, can we see one of these players in the U.S.?
I think so, without question. And let me give a little bit more background. You help me if I'm missing anything, Lei. But the safety standards, the emission standards are similar.
Well, there's no emissions standards.
Oh, yeah. So I take that.
Right,
so yeah, that's right. We're talking
one
EVs.
off the list.
So, but the safety standards and the regulations are different for the EU, for the United States. And then we get into, if we're talking about the UK, then we get into the right-hand drive versus left-hand drive. And for right-hand drive, Australia, if you can drive, if your vehicle is legally able to drive in Australia, then you can probably legally drive in Singapore and the UK. The United States is a little bit different because of the safety aspects. Bumpers might need to be reinforced because there's a lot more SUVs, there's a lot more open road. I think the average speed is much faster in Europe and the United States. And so when He Xiaopeng is talking about we're going to be globally able to sell vehicles, we're talking not one car, we're talking the same product, but different per market and approved by that local market to be sold and driven legally. So it takes effort. Homologating a vehicle could take up to a year, 14, 18 months, depending on how stringent their rules are. So even if they wanted to sell in the United States, it would, and they wanted to sell and they started the process today, it might be an 18-month process. So they have to be looking at this stuff in the next 18 months if they want to be selling everywhere by 2025.
And with the US, I mean, in addition to the product, the quality, the homologation, we have this geopolitical landscape that we talked about last episode with, the VinFast, the Vietnamese brand coming in, that they don't face the same barrier, whereas Chinese brands will. So how that plays out will be interesting to see.
And we'd mentioned this in past episodes, but they have westernized their names. These Chinese EV companies, for the most part, NIO resembles a Western word or Western name. Xiaopeng moved to XPeng, which seems to be more Western. Li Xiang went to Li Auto. So, they anticipated this, right? They anticipated moving globally. And so they, massaged their name and branding a bit. So,
but I mean, our loyal listener, Taylor, will like this, but I think BYD is still in the best position to launch a passenger vehicle in the US first.
Right.
Okay, they just launched the Han EV in the Bahamas and in Costa Rica. These are as close to the US as you can get, right?
Yes.
So, come on, you're so close. Let's do it.
If that doesn't make it obvious that BYD wants to enter the US, and they already have the infrastructure. They already build in outside of Los Angeles commercial electric buses, so they have kind of the setup of operations already.
Yeah, they know the market. They have local entities. So if anybody, it should be BYD first.
That's the no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that everybody knows we're opening the room up. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Any questions, any comments? But Lei and I will keep on talking for a little bit until there is a question. What about Xiaomi EV? I know we wanted to talk about that as well.
Actually, Xiaomi had their Q3 earnings call at the same time as XPeng.
Right.
But I listened to part of it, and it was at the very end, there were 2 questions on EVs, but there was not much answer. Basically, on the expenses, the management said the EV part of it is still relatively small compared to other parts of the business. So this year will continue to be low. So nothing really to disclose. And then the other part of it is just to spend time and effort to define a product design, reaching out to supply chain partners. But they did, by the way, Xiaomi did register a second company. It's called the Xiaomi Automotive Technology Company.
Saw that.
Yeah, based in Beijing, right? And that's so in September, they registered the Xiaomi EV company, also in Beijing. And it looks like the factory will be in Beijing as well.
Well, they keep on batting down those rumors about partnering with JAC, right?
Yep. That was one of the rumors a few months ago with JAC, but JAC denied it. So I guess SOP first half of 2024, that's still in place. They roughly have about 500 people now in the EV business. And a couple of new executive, one came from Geely, right? that joined the Shenwei Capital, the investment arm of Xiaomi, and the other one, senior exec that came from ArcFox. So a lot of poaching.
Yes.
But other than that,
that's going to continue. That's going to continue to happen.
Still a little bit too early. So yeah.
And
so that's about Xiaomi.
Just for the listeners out there, if the market is tight right now in China, so if you're a foreigner with a decent amount of automotive or technology talent, I guarantee you there's a car company for you here in China. So lots of opportunity across a lot of different companies. And it's not just the OEMs, it's the tier ones as well that are looking to bolster their management talent. So,
and then the other thing that we probably should mention is what VW is trying to do with the ID3 with this supposedly called battery leasing. In effect, it's not a battery leasing at all. In effect, it's just a fixed free interest loan.
It's free money for 60 months.
You pay 1,000 RMB a month for 60 months, and then the car and the battery is yours to keep. That's it. There's nothing else. It's just a way of that you can get the car for cheaper money, but you pay the rest of the 60,000 in installments. That's it.
Yeah. So
just try to drive sales.
So your upfront costs are substantially lower.
Yeah. So any way you can get them off the lot,
and we had talked about don't look at the price reductions or price increases. Look at the other incentives that are being offered, because that's the thing that will attract consumers. So this is a form of price reduction or discount, right? And so to me, I tweeted, this could be step one of a price war potentially, right? Because to go from 175,000 RMB to 110,000 RMB with 60 months of free money, that's a pretty big move. And so I can't think that there would be no brand that's competing directly with what Volkswagen or the ID3 to take that lightly and not play some sort of defense or offense in order to counter that.
Yeah, so these type of moves, I think we will see more of tactical moves to kind of drive up sales.
Yes.
And speak of Volkswagen, so the China CEO, basically he responded officially to rumors that he's leaving. He is leaving, but not, not soon. So, he confirmed that he was leaving.
Slower transition.
Yeah, and he basically in the interview he said, this is normal for Volkswagen. When you have people staying at one position for too long, you get bogged down. You don't have that drive anymore, and this is normal. So I guess, but he will be around, I guess, by February 1st of next year.
Yeah.
But he will be leaving, so somebody will be replacing him. So he sort of,
And you saw Eli's tweet about when Wallenstein came on board, who they passed over to promote Wallenstein. It was Wei Mingshou. So I think Eli had said that in the tweet. He said that Wei Ming's ideas were too radical for the Volkswagen board. So.
And he also revealed that the plans was to still have 80,000 sales of the ID series this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan for next year is kind of double that, so 160 to 200,000. But on the overall sales side, I think he did mention this will be the second consecutive year that it will be a drop. Yeah. So they kind of expected this year to be better than 2020, but the chip shortage, really hit them hard. So they expect actually sales to be lower than 2020.
But let's, again, and, I don't know how much of the chip shortage is actually causing their sales drop. So let's be clear, I'm a bit skeptical on that. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Li, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SINOAUTOINSIGHT. You can find Lei on Twitter at Leixing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.